Alrighty, I am here with Andrew, who is the eighth person, I believe, eliminated from Ascendant Sin City Season 9. So at this time, I will give the mic slash floor to Andrew to talk about how he feels.
That's a bad idea to give me the floor. So I am frustrated, angry, upset, confused, and humiliated and embarrassed all at the same time. And so it just sucks because for once I felt like I was finally playing a good game. Like normally I just am sort of, how am I still here? Kind of flying off the seat of my pants. But this time I actually thought I was doing really, really well. And even in my last confessional, I said, holy crap, this is starting to line up. All the puzzle pieces are fitting together. And I actually have a good chance of having a good, solid run to the end. And like completely blindsided, had no idea what was coming, have no idea even what happened or who happened. But it just sucks because this is my fifth org, and 4 out of 5 times now I have a double digit kind of shitty placement. I've only gotten far once. And even then, I ended up heartbroken at the end. So even when I win, I lose. And it just, I don't know, I just feel kind of shitty. But I'm never going to give up because I love orgs and I love Survivor and Big Brother. So no matter what, I'm always going to keep applying. I'm a 9-time Big Brother Canada applicant. I apply to orgs all the time. I've already applied to like 3 or 4 today because I just was in a rage mode. And I'm never going to give up. And sooner or later, I will fall through the cracks and will finally have some success. But yeah, it just feels shitty. And what really sucks is I don't even know who was with me and who was against me. So in terms of the vote, obviously I had my core alliance was, as I like to call it, the sexy alliance with Josh, Jack, and Alex. And I don't even know if all 3 of them were loyal to me because if you look at the vote count, only 2 people voted for Nolan. And unless a steal a vote was played, that means either Josh or Jack voted against me. It's possible a steal a vote was played and they both intended to vote Nolan. But if either one of them voted against me, that's really devastating. And it really sucks because I told them multiple times that this is my 4. I'm totally loyal to you. And what it would be even worse if it was Jack, because Jack and I have played a game in the past before. We were on opposite sides, or so we were voting against each other. But Jack knows how loyal I am. And 30 seconds into this game, I made a ride or die with Jack. Like literally, it was 30 seconds. We were one of the first 2 people introduced. And within that minute, so ride or die? Yep. Okay, cool. We're never voting against each other. We're always going to look out for each other. So if Jack stabbed me in the back, to me, that's honestly just disgusting, and I won't talk to him again. And I know that this is just a game, but no, Monopoly is just a game. Backgammon is just a game. Operation is just a game. This is way more than just a game, and I've played enough times now for people to realize that, especially if you played with me in the past, that I always stick to my word. So Jack, in my confessionals, I always listed him as number 1. He was my number 1 ally. Alex was number 2. And even though he wasn't voting in mine, there's a part of me at the back of my head that's thinking, what if he was feeding information to Nolan all along and he knew this was coming? I hope I'm wrong, but before I could even leave the Sexies group chat, Alex typed in, what the hell happened? And I'm thinking, that's really fast for you to type in what the hell happened. Like, so I don't know. And then Josh had this look of confusion on his face when I was voted off. Hopefully that was an honest look of confusion, and hopefully he wasn't just acting. But clearly, I would love it if those 3 were actually loyal to me and it was a real alliance to them, because it was a real alliance to me and I wanted to go to the Final 4 with them, and I was never writing any of their names down. But possibly 1, possibly 2, or hell, possibly all 3 stab me in the back. And if it's Jack, like I'm done with Jack. Hopefully it's not, because I like Jack. In terms of everybody else, my secondary alliance was Jen and Matt, the 905. And Jen claims that she voted for Chris as a rogue vote and that it just happened to be that she didn't realize Chris was going. I don't know if I buy that, especially now that I'm gone. And Matt clearly either voted Jack or voted myself. My hunch is that there was a large alliance that split the vote between myself and Jack, and that Brian and Nolan doubled their votes on myself, and Matt and somebody else voted for Jack, whoever the other, Erica voted for Jack, and then myself. Either Jack's vote was stolen from him, or he voted me, and I think Josh and I were the 2 votes on Nolan. I think, I don't know. And then it really confuses me because I still think for Matt, like I'm not mad. Yeah, I'm mad. I was only coming for Matt and Jen if I made it to final 6 with the 4 sexies and the 2 of them. So even though they were my secondary alliance, they were still, I was not writing Jen or Matt down until at least the final 6. So I'm out 12. So Matt voted somebody out who was not going to write his name down until the final 6. So I hope that bites him in the butt and he goes soon, because like that just was a bad move in my opinion. As for Drew, I have no idea if he knew that I was going or not, because Drew, as soon as I was voted off, messaged me privately, which he's not supposed to do, but oh well. And he said, I don't know what happened. And then he put a sad face, and I'm going to miss our late night calls. I don't know if that was true or not. I don't know. I'd like to think that it's true and he had no idea, which is why he would message me privately and not in our prod chat. Although I think I already, as soon as I was voted off, I delete. And I the one regret I have too, because I live life with no regrets, is I should have put in the Sexies group chat, just in case one of you stabbed me in the back, I would have been loyal to Final 4, but nah, it is what it is. So I don't know if Drew was loyal to me or not. I have no idea what Erica was thinking, because even though I wasn't targeting her, I had no intention of writing her name down anytime soon either. And as for Brian and Nolan, yeah, I didn't want to go, but at least I'm not subjected to calls with Nolan anymore. He would get on a call. He'd be like, "Oh, sorry, I'm driving up a mountain and I'm going to cross a bridge over water, and then I'm going to go under a tunnel." I'm thinking, what mountain has a body of water with a bridge over it, and then you go under a tunnel? Like, where are you driving, Narnia? And then his Wi-Fi would go back and forth, up and down. And then the other bad thing is he would call me from his work. I don't know what company his family owns, but there is some industrial factory shit, and he's always on some forklift. And all I could hear, I'm going to get PTSD anytime I'm in a factory and I see a forklift or I see construction. All I hear is a beep, beep, beep. It drove me fucking mental. And the fact that we've been playing for 2 weeks and he can't find the time to call me when he's not driving or at work. Like, clearly he only has time for me when it's on company time or when he's driving. His personal life, when he's at home, no, he can't be bothered with me. So I was just like, whatever. And then Brian, I hate nothing more than the solid 2 weeks of Brian where he was like, "Oh, I'm really scared. I'm really nervous. I think it's going to be me. Help me, Andrew." And so I was helping him each round try and stay in. And this round, I wanted him to stay. My target was Nolan. And there's nothing worse than a petulant toddler who constantly, like a spoiled brat. But what's worse is a spoiled brat who's faking it. So he knew I was going to, and he was still all day yesterday playing, "I'm nervous. Oh, my stomach hurts that I'm nervous." I'm like, just bitch, take an antacid and just, I don't know. So I was annoyed. I was frustrated. I still don't know what happened. And I don't know if I want to know what happened because it might make me feel worse, but I definitely, when the season is over, I want to see the voting history because I'm very curious if Josh or Jack or both voted against me. And I'm also curious from Alex if he was feeding information to Nolan, because somehow Nolan had to know that we were coming for him. And how else would he know? Josh and Jack in the Sexies chat said, "Let's vote Nolan." And I was like, okay, Nolan, great. Alex never commented on that. So it makes me think that Alex went to Nolan and told him, "Dude, they're voting you." And that's when Nolan started to rally that side and it came up, which if that's, I hope I'm just completely wrong. But if I'm right and Alex screwed me over, that was dumb of him too, because I was not writing Alex's name down until Final 4. And had I got to Final 4 with the Sexies, I had my deal with Jack that I wasn't going to write his name down and my deal with Alex. So Josh would have been my 4th place person. So I was not writing Alex's name down until Final 3. So if Alex, Josh, or Jack in any capacity screwed me over, that they lost of somebody who was never writing their name down. As for Jen and Matt, they lost somebody who was never writing their name down until final six at the earliest. So any of those people screwing me over is just a bad strategic move for them, because I don't think Ray, Erica, Brian, Nolan, or I'm missing somebody, or Drew are going to be loyal to those people. I don't see it. So it is what it is. I still had a good time, and at least I spent all my tokens. I used my extra vote, so I didn't leave the game, because there's nothing more horrifying than leaving the game with, powers on the table. So at least I did everything I possibly could, and yeah. So what's new with you, Duke?
Good opening initial rant, I think. Very, very nice. But this exit interview is about you and your game, nothing about me.
Oh.
So my first question is, you mentioned knowing Jack as somebody coming into this game. You guys had past experience through a game that you had played previously. As the reveal was happening the first night, who else did you recognize, if anybody? And who were you kind of like, I want to work with these people, or I'm kind of sketched out by this person?
I believe Jack is the only person I've played with before or recognized. If there was anybody else, I'm trying to think of the early boots. Caleb. No, I'm pretty sure Jack was the only person that I recognized. And yeah, he screwed me over in a previous game, but I was also gunning for him. Like, we were targeting each other. So I have no hard feelings when somebody's targeting me that I'm targeting, right? So, yeah, Nolan, Mr. Forklift, like, that was annoying, but I don't really hold it against him that he voted me out, because I was voting him out. So when I saw Jack, it was instant. I'm like, we've played before. We have a decent rapport. Like, it was legit within 30 seconds. We had a ride or die, and so I was going to be loyal to him the whole time. Then, yes, I made the mistake that I always make in orgs, which is I fell for the cute boy, which was Alex. And so I had a call with Alex, and we wanted to work together. And I'm sure he was, schmoozing and charming me. And I always fall for it because I'm a hopeless romantic. And so that's how that came about. And then Josh, we just had a decent first call. And again, I was attracted to him. But I sensed Josh was a more loyal player, even more so than Alex and Jack. So I'm like, okay, I better work with him. And originally, it was going to be Josh, Jack, Alex, myself. And we also vibed with Jen, Matt, and Drew. And Drew is also cute as well. But he has to throw out that multicolored sweater hoodie thing that's like yellow and light blue and pink. Like, just burn it. You need to have a challenge where you burn a piece of clothing to get like a shopping spree or something, because it's like enough with that sweater. Anyway, and I have terrible fashion, but like, whoa. So it was those 7, and I couldn't decide what kind of alliance I wanted, because I figured in a cast of 19, an alliance of 7 is, it's pushing it, because it's easy for it to leak out. And once an alliance leaks, it's over. So I thought 7 is too much. 6 is probably still too much. So I was aiming for 5, but I just couldn't find the balance of who to include and who not to include. And I thought, for my own game, it was probably better if I had this foursome with Jack, Alex, and Josh, kept Drew safe, and then made a secondary with Jen and Matt. So I felt protected with 6 other people. And that's why, as the game progressed, I felt better and better. And it's really a mindfuck, because I was totally blindsided here. But the last vote, there was a time in the Tyler vote, there was a time in the afternoon where I was dead. And it only turned around not because of me. It turned around because Drew, Jen, and Alex managed to convince and Josh managed to convince people to vote Tyler out. And so that's why I felt so good that people were looking after me. And maybe that's when the gears clicked in Nolan and Erica's and Brian's brain, that if Andrew could go from dead to pretty much unanimous, because I think those 3 votes were all Tyler, he stole one of mine, and then he used his double. So essentially, unanimous vote. that maybe they clued in that Andrew's really protected and we have to go after him. I don't know. There was also a hinky vote on Matt, and it wouldn't surprise me if somebody told Matt that it was me, which of course it wasn't. There was also a hinky vote on Josh. Wouldn't surprise me if somebody went to Josh and said it was me, which it wasn't. So any number of things could have happened. I don't know. There's a part of me that wants to know, but there's been times when I find out the truth and I feel 10 times worse. So we'll see. But yeah, from the beginning of the game, those were the 6 people that I was sort of close with. But I tried to make genuine connections with more people. Eric and I talked a lot, but we weren't on the same team. Chris, I felt good with. I really liked Tawny, and I was being true when I said I did not want Tawny to go. And when that vote came out to a tie between Josh and Tawny, I was really praying it would go to Rocks. Because if it goes to Rocks, there's a 1 in 3 chance I lose Jack, which would have sucked. But there's a 2 in 3 chance that Chris or Tyler would have gone and Tawny would have stayed because I wanted to work with her in some capacity. She just made the mistake of going after Josh, and Josh was in the sexy line, so I couldn't. There was no way I was writing Josh's name down ever. And everybody else, I think I wasn't too connected to. Julian, I didn't talk too much at all. Tyler, I was getting close to, and then he lied or misled me right before the Tawny vote and telling me he was thinking it was going to be Tawny, and then he voted Josh. And same goes for Chris. That's why I lost trust in him. But yeah, so that's sort of how I stand with everybody, I think.
So there's a couple questions that I want to ask you based off of that response. But the first one being the 2 alliances that you were a part of, the 905 and the Aces and Jacks, however you guys worded it exactly. How did those? So you mentioned how you felt good about the calls that you guys had initially. How did those actually form? Did you create those yourself, or did people come to you and say, "Hey, would you be okay joining this group?"
I believe I created 905 myself. I believe I created the 2 pair Ace High, the Sexies. I think so. With that one, I know I definitely asked Jen and Matt beforehand if they were cool with that, and I believe I talked to Josh, Alex, and Jack beforehand to make sure. And I'm pretty sure I was the one that created that, although I'm not 100%, but I believe I created both of them, which in the off chance that they talked to each other and saw that I was in both and thought I was double dipping, all they had to do was ask me. And if it was the Sexies, I would have said, yeah, but they're my secondary group. You're my final 4. And if it was 905, I probably would have I would have either lied to them and said, you're my number 1 and number 2, or I would have just told them the truth and said, nobody wanted a big group. Why don't we create a big group with the 6 of us? Which is, it's possible that happened. But yeah, I initiated both of them. And who knows if it was the right move or not, but I felt I wanted to do something. Because my problem, one of the reasons I lost the previous game, so yeah, I've been a double-digit person the whole 3 other orgs. The one time I made it far, I made it to 3rd place, but I was never in any alliance, which is probably why I got 0 votes at the end, or one of the reasons why I got 0 votes at the end. And so I was like, I need to be in some form of group. And with the way that the structure of the game works, with there essentially being a swap every week, you need more protection than just people in your own group, because your group is going to change every week. So I figured, why not make 1? And then I made 2 just because I thought, why not? It hopefully will benefit me. Obviously it didn't.
So those alliances and the people that you were working with really did not see any bit of trouble like the first 4 or 5 rounds. You guys were pretty much set. The boots were pretty much almost unanimous, if not unanimous. And, a lot of inactive players were eliminated early. And then, like you mentioned in your last response, the Tawny elimination, you got really fired up. And basically Chris and Tyler lied straight to your face. And you saw potential rocks happening. So that's basically where I feel like your game kind of turned up a little bit. Like these dudes just lied straight to your face. You were fired up. So talk about that vote in particular and how that impacted, you know, your game from there on.
Yeah, so I was already not happy going into that vote because I thought it was going to be Tawny unanimous, and I already wasn't happy about that. But I figured I'm just gonna, vote with the majority. Josh and Jack wanted Tawny out anyway, so I'm gonna stick with them. And right before the vote, I asked, I think, was it on a call with Chris? It was, no, I think it was in text. I asked Chris how he was voting, and he said he was voting Tawny, and I'm like, Tawny out. I'm like, okay. And then, yes, I did ask Tyler. I said, I think Tawny is going. And he said, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Tawny, which indicates or implies that he's voting Tawny, even though he didn't say the exact words or the phrasing correctly. So I went into it thinking it was unanimous. And then the vote came out tied. And Tawny basically says, see, it's not unanimous. You guys vote with your, vote the way you want to vote. Don't be herded like sheep or whatever she said. And I then felt like an idiot because now Tawny's mad at me when I look like the liar saying it's unanimous, which is why I can't vote for you. And these two didn't do what they said they were going to do. And so that's why I'm like, no, I'm not going to let her go out this way thinking that I was the bad guy. So that's why I spoke up and I said, Chris, Tyler, why did you lie and say you were going to vote Tawny out when you didn't? And that vote, if Tawny had said Chris or Tyler's name earlier in the day, I would have worked with Josh and Jack to get it done. But I didn't want to be the one to say Chris or Tyler's name because Tawny's a good player and she would have just gone back to them and said, Andrew said your name, and then they would have been coming after me. So I needed her to say it, and she didn't. She just stuck with Josh. So that's why I couldn't do that. And when it came time to revote, I was hoping it would come back a tie again. But then Jack messaged me and said, I'm going to stick to it. I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And when Chris and Tyler changed their minds, I was like, you know what? At least now I don't feel so bad that I called them out, and it at least saved Jack and not going to rocks. And it saved Josh too, because I was really worried at that point too, that what if Jack changes his mind and they don't, and then Josh goes. So it was a clusterfuck. When I saw the teams for that round, I thought shit, because other than Warren, we got the more fiery bunch. And so I was like, oh, and I found the last 3 rounds or so, the teams just didn't go my way. Like I didn't have good luck on my side. I think Josh made a really bad move when he didn't put Alex on our team. So we had all 4 of us and he left Alex by himself. How he got out of that one, like, kudos to him. Maybe he is working with Nolan and he's in some group I don't know about. But yeah, so it just it did go downhill from there. And at the very least, I'm proud of the fact that I was dead meat at some point on Sunday, and through not just myself, but through the allies and the connections, which I made myself, I managed to stay almost unanimously in that vote. Because typically in my org history, as soon as my name comes up, that's it. So I at least managed to get through a round where my name was written down, but I wasn't the one that went. So yeah, so I feel I did my absolute best, even though I suck.
So I just checked with our prod team, and I'm not allowed to confirm anything really that happened in your vote.
That's fine.
But you already mentioned the scenario that you think possibly could have happened. Say that was reality. Who are you most betrayed by in that specific instance? And like, why do you think, like, what do you think you could have done to prevent that scenario specifically?
Sorry,
What
scenario are you talking about? I just want to be clear.
So you mentioned earlier that you think Matt and Erica basically voted for Jack.
Right.
And you think that Nolan and Brian potentially either used double votes on you, or there was a steal of vote in play on either Jack or Josh.
Right.
Or you also mentioned the scenario that Jack or Josh turned on you. So whichever one you think is most likely, um, whatever you were leaning in your previous response, is there anything that you could have done to prevent you getting blindsided, basically? Or do you think you just would have never known?
I mean, in the scenario where some combination of Josh, Jack, and Alex betrayed me, Alex via Nolan, there was nothing I could do because that was my core four, and I was loyal to them the most. And if they were not with me, like, I have nothing. In the scenario where Josh and Jack did vote for Nolan and the steal of votes were played, or one steal a vote and potentially doubling up votes, or like one or the other. I still don't know if there's anything I could have done because I did everything I could to make Brian feel safe and tell Brian I was voting Nolan, and that was the truth. Brian even said Nolan's name first. So when I went to, or the other way around, yeah, Nolan said Brian's name first. So when I went to Brian and said Nolan said your name, like, he was on board. I had a great call with Erica where we just bonded and everything went well. And Erica was so blindsided in her vote that she thought it was her and Chris went, that she was messaging me during the chat, the part where Nicole was asking questions in our vote. So I'm thinking, why if she's blindsiding me, is she casually messaging me? So it was very weird. And then I don't even know what I could have possibly done with Matt. And I think that's the thing. There are so many question marks. I don't know if that was even the plan. It's possible Jack was the plan. It's possible. There's so many possibilities, and I don't know. But to kind of answer your question, while I'm not thrilled with Brian and Erica, I'll get over it. Matt, I still think made a big mistake because I was not writing his name down until at least final six, possibly further, depending on the boot order. Because if I had lost Josh or Jack at some point, or Alex, that would have moved Jen and Matt up in my ranking. So if at some point Alex gets blindsided and Jack gets blindsided, now I want to go to the end with Josh, but now Jen and Matt are my next two. So I think Matt made a mistake. But if, like I said in the beginning of my interview, if Jack or Josh screwed me over, I will be disgusted, especially Jack, because who makes a ride or die 30 seconds in and then sells him and throws him under the bus? So I hope I'm wrong. I hope Alex, Josh, and Jack were all loyal to me. But in my org history, whenever I make an alliance of 4 people, there was one called the Chips, there was one called the Pumpkin Spice, there was one called the Imposters. I was always the first to go, and it was always at the hands of the other 3. So I'm clearly a really bad judge of character, and I don't know who actual trustworthy people are, which is sad because I'm a fiercely loyal player, and sooner or later I'm going to play an org where people have seen me in the past and been like, oh shit, if he says he's not going to write my name down, he means it. And so one day it'll pay off for me, and I think it's just a matter of time before I finally have a good showing where I don't look like a complete idiot or cry at the end. So yeah, I just feel. I hope, but the odds are at least one of those 3 stab me in the back. Possibly all 3.
Well, you will find out after the season when the voting chart comes out. But something that I want to ask you based off of that last response is, you mentioned 3 separate times where you have left the game in a 4-person alliance first, in that you think that, well, you mentioned that once you say something, your word's basically golden, you're not going to go back and betray, and all your actions spoke to that in this game. Why do you think it is the way that it's happened in the past, where people don't either believe you or take you out or turn on you like that? Why don't you think you're able to convey that message to these people?
The reasoning that I got, okay, so one of them, the Imposters, I was an early boot. So it was just one person in particular that turned on me. But the other two, the reasoning that I got as to why I was the first one that they all turned on, which was all one of them was not. One was pre-jury, one was not. Was you were too big of a threat if you got to the end, and we knew we were going to beat you, which is such a load of crap when you're at like the halfway point. Like, really, you're going to turn on somebody who's in a Final Four alliance with you at like 12 because you're worried about them winning when the jury hasn't even started or has just started. So, I mean, I don't know if that's true or not, but it could be bad luck. It could be that I just a bad judge of character. It could just be that I'm not cut out for this game. Maybe four-person alliances formed on week one or round one are just meant to fail. But I mean, there is the Brigade, there is the Pretty Boys. There's a whole bunch of other alliances that were created relatively early on with four people that made it at least deep in the game. And I never see the benefit of turning on a four-person alliance early. It makes no sense to me. But I'm clearly a different player. Based on my placement history, I'm clearly a bad player. So what do I know? You're probably in a better position to talk about that. But it's just frustrating because I always feel like I get the short end of the stick, always. And it doesn't mean I'm never going to stop trying, and I'm going to keep going and going and going, and sooner or later it'll pay off.
Alrighty, so this interview has gone a little bit longer than expected, but I still want to ask you.
Surprise!
I still want to ask you 3 questions that I really, really like to ask at the end of the interviews.
Okay.
Number 1 is, who do you want to go far now that you're out? Who do you want to see leave right behind you? And then number 3 is kind of a combo question. What was your favorite part, and would you play the game again?
It is so difficult to answer the first two because I really don't know who stabbed me in the back and who didn't. And it really could be any out of Alex, Josh, Jack, Jen, Matt. It's possible all 5 were against me. It's possible all 5 were with me, although I find it hard to believe Matt was now, given the votes that I know. Same with Drew. I have when he messaged me after, like I left, Andrew has deleted the Andrew Drew chat. And then right away he messages me like personally on Skype saying, I don't know what happened, upside down, sad face. I really miss talking to you. I'm going to miss talking to you and having our late night chats. I don't know if that's bullshit or not, because he might think I'm on the jury and he might be trying to pander to me. I don't know. And I really, so the person who I want to see win, oh boy. I think out of everybody in my top group, I think that Josh is the least likely one to have betrayed me, because I believe Josh is straight and doesn't have he's not a big personality. So the look on his face of confusion, I don't think he's he's not an actor, right? Like I don't see him in some Broadway theater show, dancing to cats or whatever. So I think that reaction of surprise was genuine. And so I don't think he stabbed me in the back, especially after I helped save him in the Tawny vote. So I think Josh was loyal to me, fingers crossed. So I'm going to say Josh is the one I want to see win, even though I think his chances are almost zero. Then the person who I want to see go out next, I guess, would be Matt, because I would be shocked if Matt was the other Nolan vote. Mind you, it could be. No, I'll say Nolan, because that's so tough. I'm going to assume Matt voted Jack or against me. So I want to see Matt go next, because I was not voting Matt down until at least the final 6. But if Jack or Alex was against me, then I want to see them go next, because I was never, ever writing their name down. So that essentially didn't answer your question. I apologize. And would I play again? Fuck yes. I mean, I'm a sucker. I'm a sucker for punishment. I love orgs. I've loved every game I've ever played in. Even though I suck at it, I still have fun. And yeah. So, oh, and my best moment by far was winning my first ever endurance comp in an org. Like that was amazing for an hour and a half. Considering a week before I fell on ice and sprained my ankle and couldn't even stand, for me to do that a week later for an hour and a half was pretty incredible. So that moment I will remember for the rest of my life.
Alrighty, awesome. So those are all the questions that I have for you. You answered pretty much all of the VL questions as you were talking and answering my question. So that's off the check list. And lastly, I'm just going to give you an opportunity if you have anything else that you want to talk about or a closing statement for the interview. Now is the time to do so if you have anything.
Oh boy. Can you believe that I'm actually speechless and I think I got everything I wanted to rant about out of the way? Um, no, I will say that as bad as I played, this was not my worst showing. So that's good. And yeah, and I can't wait. Like, I really hope that the Ascendance live game that you guys are planning, I hope that is a hit because I've only played in two live games and unfortunately the border is closed, so I can't even apply. But I would absolutely in the future love to play a live version because it's a lot of fun. But yeah, I'm out of words.